Hello, out there, and welcome to my discussion with Claire on the new moon that was yesterday in the sign of Sagittarius. Um, we come to you every few weeks, cycling through the moon and thinking about, if you listen to the previous one, where we come from, the full moon in Gemini, and where we're going. And right now, like I said, if you look outside, I see maybe it's darker and a time to set intentions for this new phase, this new cycle of the moon. And I'll have Claire share her insights into what it means, not just in this phase of a new moon, but in the sign of Sagittarius, which sort of gives it the context to think about, and how it is moving through your life, and how you can take this information to help gain more insight for yourself about yourself and your experience in a body and in this planet Earth. Okay, Claire, I'm going to pass it on to you.
Thank you, Jamie. So Sagittarius, fire sign, ninth house. Um, but as always, I want to invite people to get with the moon. That's what we're really doing. We're pausing to just feel moon energy. In this case, new moon, sort of a more internal, interior side to our emotional being, and that could be many things. But when it's a new moon, we're looking at something that isn't obvious, something that is you can really only see when you close your eyes, or that kind of energy. So, also with the moon, we're thinking about the ocean tides, and tides coming in and tides coming out. And with that, I kind of want to go into how what came to me in this meditation that I did for a day or so about new moon in Sagittarius, because um, you know, Sagittarius in the ninth house is about sort of learning by travel, and that fire that the human half of the centaur figure shoots into the air is commonly considered to be sort of the fire of insight, or learning new things about other cultures, and just learning in general, traveling and learning and going beyond where those four hoofs of the lower half of that glyph are planting you, as it were. So you only really know what's foreign to you, or what you've picked up on in your travels, because you know what's familiar to you. So that sort of contrast is built into Sagittarius. And I also just want to put out there, and people can keep in mind, what it was for me anyway, was coming into contact with feeling stuck. I felt really stuck. And when I say that, what I was thinking about was the Sagittarian waist, the part of the body that connects to the kind of horse half. That, to me, in Sagittarius is, the insight, and the twisting of that waist is really about pivoting and being able to take in all angles and shoot, to all corners, those fire arrows. And I really just want to hopefully build around that idea of twisting, or in my case, not being able to twist, like feeling this stuckness. So the stuckness is what gave me my my problem to solve with this trying to tap into new moon energy in Sagittarius. I was feeling really stuck. So I started to think about that. And, in astrology, you work a lot with oppositions. So what's opposite ninth house is third house, Gemini. So we did come out of this full moon 2 weeks ago in Gemini, and now we're looking at the Sagittarius energy. So what do those two signs have to do with each other? Well, learning. So in the third house, typically, the third house is the same as saying Gemini, really energetically. Third house energy is learning your environment, learning like when you're a little kid and you have your toys and you have your routine and you're learning. And that Gemini skill of being able to mirror people with language or with facial expressions, the twins, just being able to communicate is a real powerful thing, because it's the first air sign and you're really learning what it is to have the tools to communicate. Well, opposite that is ninth house, and that's a different kind of learning. It's more progressed. And for me to take it straight to the mat here about the moon, because I'm not giving some spiel on astrology, I'm talking about the moon. The energy that I felt that was stuck for me personally was what I learned in childhood, let's say, about my emotional patterning. And this new moon in Sagittarius gave me an opportunity to realize how stuck I felt. And that eventually the twisting and the insight to aspects of that Sagittarian glyph, of that waist being able to twist, and then the arrows, the fire arrows shooting into the darkness to just try and find something new, came to mean a great deal to me, because in the ninth house, we learn what we know and what we don't know. That kind of travel emotionally. If we're talking about the moon, we're talking about emotional stuff, what I know about myself and what I don't know about myself. And isn't that what it is when we're trying to get unstuck? When we're stuck, we generally try and get unstuck with what we know. Substances, certain kind of conversations and narratives, or habitual patterns of grief and what's familiar to you about being stuck. You can only really they say you can't really free yourself with the language of the oppressor. Well, right, you have to invent something new to get unstuck. And that really opened it up for me when I started to think about the ninth house energy of learning and going beyond my typical emotional patterns of feeling bad, feeling overwhelmed, or feeling, kind of just stuck in that. And because it's the moon, I really do feel so blessed to have this connection with the moon, because I think about the tides coming in and the tides coming out. And isn't that like what it feels like when we get unstuck? Let's say we're stuck in the sand, and where it's like quicksand. When the tide comes in, a whole new wave of emotional experience comes in and frees us, and we can just pick our feet right up and get out of that stuck emotional quicksand feeling. I was thinking I felt like I was sort of in a paper mache mask inwardly that had just layer upon layer, tears, blood, sweat, and tears, just making these layers over the years of a sort of a cast that I felt stuck in my third house, sort of my early childhood learning. And then this new moon in Sagittarius brought to me the idea of, if I learn other ways of neuropathways, taking certain ideas and poking holes in them, or looking for light, inspiration, and insight in a way that is beautifully rendered by this idea of fire. Sagittarius is a fire sign in the water element, which is the new moon. The new moon is water, and you have Sagittarian arrows of fire going in water, going into your emotional content. It's it's not quite as fast and brilliant as the ideas, of map making and exploration and travel in the sense of, the sun sign Sagittarius. But in the moon, you can feel it as though you're able to create new experiences that are just as significant as the ones that you had when you were young, but you may be outgrowing. So I wanted to just bring it back to this idea of being stuck and unstuck as a way of holding the possibility for an intention with a new moon in Sagittarius, where you can find creative, which is fire, new ideas and feelings, being open to that so that they can, subsume what you thought you knew. Being open to what you don't know about yourself, and looking at how what you thought you knew isn't working for you anymore, and that's the stuckness that you can play around with. So both the twisting of the centaur, sort of moving and looking in all these different directions, the twisting, and also the new ideas, which is fire, in your emotional experience. I would really like to thank you all for letting me talk this much about it, because I feel it's as the last new moon of the year, and in the dark, sort of in the winter, the sort of most, the dark, it sort of just feels like the most inward, darkest new moon of all. It's just really wonderful to picture being able to fan out and spread out and travel and bring in that ninth house energy to, my experience as a human, that it can be so much more than what I learned early on in my chronological life. Feels like a wonderful thing to share, which is also what Sagittarius is about. It's sort of an optimistic, positive sign. And I never feel optimistic or positive. That isn't really my jam. But I do feel it in this moon context of how we can be embrace the divine feminine and always have that connection to the tide coming in and the tide going out, and this regular change that's reliable and brings newness. It's just a really wonderful feeling.
Thank you for sort of finding words and ways to explain and share the symbolic and different ways we can interpret this time. I love the looking at the actual glyph, and when you help to sort of bring that into the description, when you look at the way that a Sagittarius has that horse slash human slash with the arrows, and there's all sorts of beautiful and poetic ways to find the meaning and interpretations of this language of astrology, and take time, if you're listening, to reflect on how this feels, hence the moon, and trust what naturally becomes revealed by within these themes that Claire described. So anyway, rest and enjoy the darkness, and we'll see you in the next full moon, which is the very end of the year. And take care.
Take care.